Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Photographer Mindset Podcast. I'm your co-host, Seth Macy.
I'm your co-host, Aaron Manis.
Eric, how are you today? How are you doing? Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Doing pretty good. Thank you.
We mentioned when we first got on here that we were disappointed that you didn't have the long, luscious locks. And then you informed us that that's the start of every conversation. And then we were deeply humbled knowing that we are not original in any sense of conversational practice.
That wasn't my intention, but it is my intention to fly under the radar by having a 3-year-old biopic on the internet. So I don't really like getting spotted out in the field. Not that it happens very often, but...
You're that famous? Or you're hiding from the FBI, one of the two. If the FBI is looking for this man, he is here currently in virtual space. That's not much help, I realize.
I plead the fifth on that one.
Well, smart man. Let me ask you this right off the bat. Okay. I've spent a lot of time on your website today. And you had these really, your courses seem very interesting. I highly recommend people check those out. Links to that in the episode description. But enough flattery. I viewed the trailer videos that you created, and I generated a lot of questions for today based off of those because they really piqued my interest. And I just want to start off with one simple question. Do you think that a photo is good if it's simply interesting?
Not necessarily, because I think a certain subject could be inherently interesting, maybe just because you've never seen it before. But I think what makes it a good photo is that it is interesting, but also presented in an effective way to make you, notice the right things and maybe even feel a certain way. So like, my personal philosophy is like, I don't really go out looking for inherently interesting things. I actually try to show things which a lot of times can just be ordinary or mundane things in an interesting way through composition and lighting and things like that. So I feel most proud when I make an image of something that people probably see every single day in their life, but I present it in a way that it feels completely new and teaches them something new about it.
Yeah, I've fallen into that trap before where I have the thought of I got to go out and find something epic or interesting or really cool, as opposed to making it interesting or cool.
Mm-hmm. Or a photo could have like interesting processing, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Like, oh, that's a weird choice, or like that's.
You mean in post?
Yeah,
You also mentioned something in that video. I was furiously writing notes. Brilliant, man, you are. You mentioned a mistake you see a lot of photographers make is seeing something for how it ought to be rather than for what it is. I'm curious in the photography world if you can elaborate on that. And if you've personally fallen into this, this trap outside of the technical space, for example, with people or with an opportunity, seeing it for how it ought to be rather than for what it really is.
Yeah, so I think with that, what I was referring to is like when you're out doing photography or hoping to take some pictures, I think a lot of photographers hope for things to pan out a certain way. They hope for the sky to look a certain way. They hope for the weather to be a certain way. They hope to find certain things and certain moments that they've already kind of contrived in their minds. And they're trying to find things that match those like mental templates that they've created. And that's just very unreasonable to even expect that. Nature is out of our control, which is a good thing. And I also think that like you're just going to not be able to immerse yourself as much in your surroundings because you're not going to be observing them how they are. You're just going to be like seeing them through this mental lens of your expectations and how you wish they looked instead. And so I just feel like it creates a very strong disconnect between you and your surroundings. Instead of having zero expectations, observing everything around you and being like really attuned with what's going on and leaning into that instead of kind of being opposed to it.
Yeah, it's just an interesting concept, both within photography and outside. Having low expectations, I think, at the heart, we all want to be extremely idealistic. I'm not even going to say setting a bar low, having no set expectations. Has that been a learned skill for you, or just something you've always felt has been a part of your personality?
I think I started to let go of expectations when I was traveling, because unpredictable things would always happen. And at first I'd get frustrated or upset. And then I just realized like, this is just part of traveling around the world. Like and that can actually like make it exciting and awesome. And sometimes things don't happen the way you wanted them to happen, but they are even better, or, they're more significant or memorable than anything you could have come up on your own with your limited imagination. So because of traveling, that's how I got into photography. And so that was something that I started practicing in my photography, but it's definitely spilled over into my everyday life, just like not really having expectations for people. I definitely have expectations for myself, but I'm pretty flexible. I try to be very fluid with things and, projects and things that I work on. But what's that?
Where do you set the bar for yourself? That's an interesting thought. You say you have low expectations for others and things that you can't control, but maybe I'm jumping the gun here and answering for you, but is it perhaps because you can control yourself in your actions, or is it for entirely different reasons?
Well, my expectations are like a certain level of quality, meaning, like my main metric of quality is how do I feel about it? Am I completely satisfied or not? And so I never post images that I think other people will like or anything like that. I always just pay attention to how I feel about them, because that's the only thing I can really know. But when it comes to like not having expectations for myself, like when I release a book, I'm not like, oh, I hope to make this amount of money with it. Anything that's kind of external and out of my hands, I try not to have any expectations for. Like anything that depends on other people acting a certain way or performing something, I try to just take that as it comes and, just find out what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. Aaron, anything? Dad?
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you feel like the more you go out to do photography and be out in nature, the easier that task is versus the person that travels once a year and they're kind of banking their whole portfolio for that year on this good weather, Yosemite, for example, and they have a week and they're just really putting a lot of eggs in one basket. I think I'm curious your thoughts on that. The difference between being out there a ton and letting it come to you and enjoying the cloudy days for the cloudy days, knowing you're going to be around again.
Yeah. So like what you're describing is like, one person that has a very limited amount of opportunity, and somebody else that has, much more opportunities because they can spend more time out in nature. But what really makes the difference isn't like time constraints. It's the expectations that someone has. So someone that only goes out one weekend out of the year could have the same expectations as somebody that goes out, 100 times a year. What's going to make the difference is not having any expectations. Like really, no matter what, I never hope to make a photograph. Like all I hope to do is go out into nature, camp, and slow down and like, fall back into synchrony with the pace of nature, which is so much more fulfilling and satisfying for my being than the pace of modern life. So that's what I'm always like actively seeking. And that's what I always get, as long as I don't dilute my experience or I'm not distracted by too many things. There's a certain way you have to like prepare yourself and be open and receptive to those kinds of things. But yeah, as long as you're expecting like certain outcomes in terms of photography, it doesn't matter how often you go out, you can still be severely disappointed. And yeah, I don't think it really makes much of a difference how much you go. So everyone's capable of changing their expectations.
Yeah. I like to think that everything comes up zero. So if you have no expectations, sometimes amazing and lucky things happen. And then other times things just don't go your way at all. And it somehow always comes up zero.
Yeah, I think I'm just talking about like going out into nature. I think there's always some kind of benefit to be gained. So I'm not talking about photography in general, because if I go out into a certain environment, to try and make photos, maybe that is the only thing I could gain from that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. But nature is this extremely complex, like amazing and mysterious environment that we evolved in for millions of years. And so it has very different effects than anywhere else that's man-made or that we can find.
Yeah, no doubt.
When you're in nature, I'm curious about your mindset. Is your mindset for silence and personal growth or reflection and thought? Is it about learning from nature? Is it about quiet and just peace? And what, or maybe some of all of it, or things I've forgotten here, but I'm curious, like your, maybe not expectations, but like your goal going into nature, what do you get most from it?
Yeah, definitely all of those things that you said, but some trips will encompass all of those things. Other trips, maybe it'll just be one or two things. It depends on what's going on in my life, how open I am at the moment, what I'm trying to process mentally. Because at the end of the day, nature is like, it's like a refuge for me. It's somewhere that I go to like, just kind of whatever I need. It has been able to help me in some way. And like tragedy or just making a big decision or really anything at all. And then even in moments where I'm not really contemplating anything big in life or anticipating any kind of changes or anything like that, it'll still just have very therapeutic effects for me. And if I don't go into nature, like that's how I've realized why I need it. If I don't go for a prolonged amount of time, I definitely go crazy and have trouble finding equilibrium, and I just don't feel like myself. So
what happens in those moments?
I'll just be very distracted, scatterbrained. It's difficult to find focus. Definitely feel depressed. All of these side effects that are scientifically proven to happen when we're not in our natural environment. The Nature Fix is a really great book that talks about all those things. You know, elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, stress, high cortisol levels. All these things happen when we're not in nature, in open space, breathing fresh air and slowing down for once.
Yeah. It explains New York City to me.
Yeah.
So, 12 million people that haven't touched ground in weeks, just concrete barriers and metal. And there's the stress and the rush and the angst that you feel in the city after a couple of days.
And it's insane that some people go their entire lives without experiencing anything different. I just don't understand. But
sorry, New York.
Yeah, to each their own. And I have good friends that are city people and love it and love that, maybe that buzz and energy. And I think it can be too much or too overstimulating for some. Probably the same as noise or music. So like heavy metal, cool. You like that? That's great. I don't get it. You know, I try to get it. I don't get it, you know? So I think it's just each their own.
It's like coffee or Guinness, you know? Guinness beer, their first 5 are terrible, but you just keep drinking them until you like them.
That hasn't been my experience. But my friends do refer to me as a beer snob.
Oh, are you a beer snob? I did that with black coffee too. I didn't want to put sugar and milk in it anymore, and I just kept drinking black coffee until it was the way, and now it's the only way. So you want to get into
it's all about the beans though. Like you got to get some high quality coffee for it to taste good black. And sometimes that's like even better because you can taste the full flavor profile. But I usually do a latte too. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you got to grind the beans. You got to taste the process. Then you got to do a French press or a pour over or something.
AeroPress.
Okay.
You got to get on the AeroPress game.
Never tried an AeroPress.
French press is horrible.
Oh God,
here we go.
I got humbled.
Well, you like having like gritty coffee grounds in the bottom of your cup, like when you get towards the end of it?
Nope. No one
I think that's how I know that it was. Usually my strongest coffees are like that. So I don't know. Maybe enlighten me. Maybe this is the period of enlightenment for me.
Well, like with the AeroPress, it's super easy. It's just like 2.5 minutes to brew it. And it uses an espresso filter and you get zero grittiness at all. All you get is just pure liquid, like crystal clear. It's super clean.
Okay. I'm interested.
Yeah. It's kind of like a cheaper way to make espresso. And it's also great if you're camping because it's super easy to carry around or if you're traveling or whatever. Like it's not complicated at all.
Oh, makes sense. We go to your podcast. It's full of AeroPress sponsorships.
Yeah, that's why.
No, because it's a different kind of brew.
You're out in Utah? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. What's your beer of choice?
Utah is like the desert for craft beer.
Not good. Or just really dry.
There are a couple breweries here that are good, like TF Brewing in Salt Lake or Helper Beer down in Helper, Utah. Those are the two spots I hit the most. But I typically have beer sent to me from like New York or Portland or Louisiana.
Yeah, cool.
New Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah. Out east is pretty strong, I do have to say.
Yeah, the New England area is amazing for IPAs.
I'm in Connecticut and like Vermont and New Hampshire and all those places.
Connecticut, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's out there. But
there's a lot of good smaller ones. No, there's a lot of good smaller ones. I think they came second place, but you have Treehouse right across the border. You must have heard of Treehouse.
Treehouse is super overhyped though. I haven't had a single Treehouse IPA that I was stoked on, honestly. Pretty underwhelming.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think Treehouse is good, I could blow your mind super easily.
No, there's a lot of good stuff, but I think the key to Treehouse is how fresh it was. It's like that day brewing versus getting some like a sip of sunshine back in the day when it was thing and it's a month old. I think that made it.
That is absolutely relevant. That's why you always got to buy straight from the brewery. But you actually don't want to drink like IPAs at least super fresh. You got to let them sit for like a week, or else they're what they call green, and the flavor will be a little off.
Hurt your tummy.
Gotta let them sit.
Tummy twisters. Yeah.
That was a fun intermission, guys. Great.
What about Heady Topper? Is that crap?
Alchemist Brewing?
Yeah.
I've had Heady Topper and Folka Banger a couple times, and they're pretty good. Obviously, it's going to vary from batch to batch, like everything.
Yeah.
So I'm still open to be surprised more, but that's like more of a classic. Like they were awesome because they were kind of the first hazy IPAs, like New England IPA style breweries. But it's definitely advanced from that at this point. Like,
all right, you're getting stuff shipped from out here to you. What are you shipping? You're getting a 6-pack, a mixed 6-pack. I'm gonna write this down.
No, it's more like 16 cans, and typically from Fiden's Brewing in upstate New York. They're my favorite ever. Yeah, they're insane. And they actually ship within New York now, but not out of state. So
Aaron is writing.
You gotta have if you have a friend in New York that could get you some, I highly recommend it.
Where upstate, do you know?
Albany.
Oh, that's close to me.
Oh, there you go. You're definitely gonna have to make a trip, and you'll probably see my buddy Jimmy there that goes every day.
What's going on, Jimmy?
Hey, Jimmy. I've heard about you.
Did you write it down, Aaron? You got it?
Yeah, I'm good. We can get back to photography or mindset.
I enjoyed that. I hope people who are beer connoisseurs enjoyed that as well.
Photography mindset /
I'll drop a few other names. Mortalis is super good. If you like sours and stouts, they're in upstate New York. They have a few different locations. Burial is really good in North Carolina. They have a lot of different locations in North Carolina. Equilibrium is really good in New Jersey. If you like stouts, they have some pretty insane stouts. Some of the best I've ever had. Certain breweries are like better at different styles, so you can't really like go in expecting everything to be amazing. You got to know what they specialize in.
Yeah, of course.
Fiden's is IPAs.
Have you photographed any beers? Or
so that's funny because I'm friends with the guys here at TF Brewing, and I displayed a bunch of my work when my first book came out in their tap room, which was really cool. And like as part of that, since I was hanging out there a lot, I photographed like 2 beer releases that they did for some special beers, and that was pretty cool. I don't think it turned out.
I asked one of your pro tips on your Instagram was to, I'm paraphrasing roughly, maybe you can do a better job, was to, I guess, like spend more time with things you love, and that'll make you a better photographer or better at photographing those things. So your whole page is lit, and your website is littered with beautiful landscapes. So I was curious to know if you had ventured out into, listening to the passion come through.
Yeah.
With the brews. I was like, you have to be photographing breweries or doing something.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was open to the idea when we talked about it, because I do really like beer. So I got creative and stuff with like ingredients and things to show in the photo. But there's definitely a learning curve there. Like if I kept doing it, I would get better. I wasn't like blown away by the results, but yes, I think the more interested you are in something, the greater your capacity will be to understand it and photograph it in different ways and present it in different ways. Like, I think it's just important to like be super familiar with your subject, just like a doctor needs to be as familiar as possible with the disease that he's studying or the kind of procedures that he's doing, or a lawyer, you know, in the field of law that they're practicing. Like, it just makes sense. So when you're a photographer, like you should choose your subject, your genre very intentionally, and not just kind of be all over the place, like photographing things that aren't very meaningful to you, because it's not very reasonable to expect other people to care about something that you don't care about yourself.
Very fair point. Do you think it's possible to get too creative or overly creative with something, let's say like a beer can, right? You're out in nature, you're studying light, you're looking at patterns, you're looking for textures, which is a very creative process, where something as potentially as simple as we want a nice, good beer can photo, someone who's naturally looking for all these creative elements could maybe overdo it. Have you ever struggled with that?
Well, yeah, that's like something that every photographer has to learn. I think when you start out, you're very focused on addition. You know, you're like, okay, here's a cool subject, here's a cool foreground, here's a cool background, here's a cool sun star, here's this thing. You're trying to cram in as many things as you can into the scene, thinking that each thing you add will also add to the quality or interest or message. But really, like when it comes down to any kind of art form, I think it's best to be concise and never have anything superfluous. And depending on the scene, it's going to call for more or less in order for the right thing to be accentuated and draw the attention. Otherwise, it can just get buried in all this noise of all these different things going on. You also need it to be cohesive as well. And the more things you include, the less likely it's going to turn out cohesive. Like the less likely all those things are going to play well together and all like jointly elevate the subject, like the main thing that the photograph's about.
Right. How did you put it? Photographing everything is photographing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like to think of it too as kind of like an interior designer of a house or of a room. If your couch is super quirky and eccentric and the wallpaper is all over the place and your stone fireplace chase is, you know, incredibly beautiful, you wouldn't know where to look, and then nothing ends up being spectacular.
Yeah, there's no focus or subject or like central theme.
Right. So I think this, if you treat it as your photograph, this is what I've been thinking of recently, as designing a room or a space, sitting down and thinking, what do I want to stand out in this room? What do I want people to look at? And then I'll build around that. Is that similar, maybe a similar analogy to how you're treating composition?
I see it more as like making a movie or writing a book. You have your main character and then you have supporting characters. You have a villain. It's always about one single person. You know, like Batman, for example, you have Batman and then you have the Joker, and the Joker helps you to learn more about Batman because they're antithetical. You know, he's going to reveal his weaknesses and his strengths and things like that. But it's not about both of them equally, right? It's weighted towards Batman, and that's why the trilogy is focused on Batman, and Joker's only in one of the movies. So, like, if you have a movie with like 20 superheroes, and it's like not really about anyone in particular, it just becomes very diluted, and it's just like not, the story is just not going to be as strong, and you end up with the Avengers movies, which
I was going to say, this is not,
every Marvel
not an
movie.
Avengers fan.
Yeah. So that's kind of the mistake that they're making. Whereas like, you know, Christopher Nolan just like really focusing on Batman and not including too many other side characters. It's a lot more powerful.
So how are you determining?
You guys you have two different analogies, and I have a third where I feel like it's a stripped down song. Like what is with an acoustic guitar and my message and my melody, can this still stand on its own? And if there's stuff to add, if there's composition to add or production to add, cool. But on its own, it really should be able to stand. And that's kind of how when I think of imagery or editing, it's very similar to me as like the process of writing songs. Not that I do that often, but in terms of what I've viewed or have seen, that is an analogy I always think of. Like, you can ruin a really good song by adding too much freaking didgeridoos in the background.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic, because if you have too many instruments and they're just overpowering each other, there's like no melody, and it's like, it's really difficult to include more and more instruments and have it be cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this begs the question, how do you determine if your subject is strong enough on its own?
Well, it depends on its size. If it's a very small subject, you probably can't include too much around it, because you're going to have to zoom out too much, and then it's going to become severely minimized. So when you're dealing with like larger subjects in general, like mountains, you're going to zoom out, and there's room to include like trees, lakes, waterfalls, and things, because they're not going to dwarf the mountain at all, depending on your perspective. But so the smaller your subject is, probably the fewer things you can include. Granted, their scale is, larger than that thing, but I think it also depends on the light, like how strong the light is. If it's like really isolating a subject, you can get away with including more things if they're in the shade and having a wider scene, because that light is just like really spotlighting that thing. If the light is very even, it's going to be more difficult because everything is illuminated the same amount. So the light isn't really making any one particular thing stand out. So that's where you got to think more about like pattern, or like what the overall scene creates, or maybe it needs to stand out because it's a different color than everything else around it. It just depends like how much contrast there is to work with.
Right. Do you think golden hour is a myth?
It definitely doesn't last an hour. More like golden 2 minutes.
I mean, you hear people say, "Oh, you got to shoot golden hour. You have a window. Rush, rush, rush. This is when you should be shooting." Do you call BS?
I just don't think there's any quality of light that is all around the best quality of light in every scenario. So certain scenes are going to look much better in the middle of the day with like a silvery kind of lighting, depending on the color of the subject matter, depending on how much contrast you need, depending on like what you need to be accentuated. So like at the end of the day, the sun is much lower. It's not going to hit certain things. It's only going to hit like the taller stuff in the area, things that are above the horizon. So like other things will be in like deep shade, which might not be so complimentary. So it all just depends on what you're photographing and what kind of light is going to complement it the best to bring out the right things.
Yeah, I think you said there's no such thing as bad light.
Only good or bad uses of light.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that comes back to the concept of intention, right? Not kind of being reactive to, oh, this is golden hour. This is all I can do, versus, okay, I'm going to make this look instead with what I have.
Yeah, you should never limit yourself to a certain window of the day to make photographs. Like,
it's just not practical when you're traveling. Let's say you've spent thousands of dollars to go to a place for a week. I mean, I'm not going to go hiking in the Alps at sunset and sunrise. Yeah, I'm going to go whenever I can, right?
I just think if you're creative enough, there's always some kind of opportunity if you just have the eyes to see it. There's always something interesting happening at any time of day.
Do you think that's something people can work on, discovering or realizing those interesting things? Or do you just have it or you don't?
You can definitely train your eye to be more observant, especially now that we're seeing that people are losing their attention span because of social media and smartphones and everything. I think that means you can also strengthen it in the other direction. So it's like a muscle, you got to use it or else it atrophies. And so, when I'm out on a prolonged trip, like 3-4 weeks, I definitely notice myself being way more attuned and just noticing things a lot quicker and all around me than like, if I'm just going out every weekend or, once a month I'll eventually get to that spot, but it's like, you can just like ride it longer if you're able to stay out for a longer amount of time. So you can definitely train it and become better at it just by practicing observation. And I think the most important tool that many photographers don't really fully capitalize on are our eyeballs, like looking at the world around you with your eyes before you even start looking through your camera. Because once you start looking through the viewfinder, it can be so limiting and it can cause you to ignore so many other things around you because you're just like breaking down the world into such a small frame. I think it's better to try and absorb what's around you first. And then when you find something interesting, use your camera as a tool to study it at a deeper level and, kind of like a microscope or something like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's compulsive. You get to a place you're so excited, you reach for your camera and then that ship has sailed, right? You're shooting away. What advice would you give to people to help them slow down? Is it as simple as having a conscious thought, placing that in your mind before you get up to the top of that vista or whatever, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to look around," and just repeating it over and over again? I'm hoping to speak. I think really struggle with this.
I think initially, for sure, you kind of have to force yourself to act a certain way, but later on, it just becomes learned behavior. It's just going to become natural the more you put it into practice, just like anything. So just always ask yourself, like, what is all around me? Like, have I looked in every direction? Am I only looking at the ground or up? Am I missing out on something? And just like always determine what it is you find interesting specifically about any given scene before you start trying to create a composition, because you really don't know what you're creating the composition around if you haven't determined like what it is that draws you into it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that is enough too. Do I find this interesting? Yes. After you've looked around and then start shooting. I think the thought that maybe creeps into people's heads, I don't know, this doesn't happen. Maybe this happened to me early on in my career was, are other people going to find this as interesting as I am right now? As opposed to simply stopping after saying, is this interesting to me?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's irrelevant what other people think because you'll never know. So you may as well just ignore that entirely. It's impossible to know what other people think.
Also, for beginners out there, maybe a trap that I fell into was, again, with limited time or limited travel, or you go to Acadia National Park for the first time and you, on your trip, have 3 sunsets and there's 6 places you'd love to photograph at sunset. Going to 2 for each sunset to try to get to those 6 and walking away with like, I was so rushed there. Like I was not in it. And I left with a freaking blurry photo, like I wasn't even myself versus I feel like I remember this one night where I had one spot and I got dinner and sat there and was in the spot for hours. Sunset came. I had my settings. I had like everything, the composition for this one photo that I wanted. And I just waited the light. There must have been 100 different variations of the light as it's setting and getting that one photo and being really happy with the experience and just the slowness of all that and taking it all in versus this need to like feed Instagram at the time, to be honest. And like, I need to come away from this trip with 100 photos or I failed. Like that kind of mindset, I think is a shift that comes with time and comes with maybe experience and maybe failing or making mistakes too many times where you're definitely rushed and not in the moment. It's more about like the numbers that you're trying to get versus sitting there and being like, I hope to walk away with one photo that I truly like.
I think that's a very important point that you've just made because I actually practice photography in a very different way. I wouldn't say it's better or that I would recommend one over the other, but I typically will never just find something and sit on it for hours and hours till the lighting is just right. I tend to focus on the lighting in any given moment and then consider what things it's accentuating. Sometimes that's more fleeting than others. Like if it's a partly cloudy day and there's dappled light and you have like all these spotlights moving around in the landscape, those moments are only going to last like 5 or 6 seconds. So it's like the opportunity is there and then it's not. And so there's really no point in waiting around on that same thing. It's like find something else. So I always just kind of like I kind of just like let nature point things out to me. And so like that's how I approach it. Instead of like finding something and waiting for something to happen, it's like, what is happening right now around me?
Yeah, I like that too.
So I'll typically, make several or sometimes even a dozen images in just a few hours, depending on where I am.
Yeah, Aaron, to your point, I think moving into the future for myself, when I'm going with traveling with Haley or on my own, whatever, I'm going to try and build itineraries that focus on seeing more of fewer locations rather than trying to get slightly above average photos of all the places I possibly can. I'd rather have some really sick shots of places that I really researched and spent a good chunk of time at.
Yeah.
Well, and more importantly, your experience is just going to be way better. Like you're going to be able to immerse yourself more in the place, learn more about it.
Yeah.
And
I've always run around, and by the end, I'm like, "Whew, we did so fucking much," and that's a good feeling. But at the same time, I'd like to come back from a trip and not be burnt.
Yeah.
You definitely prefer to feel restored.
I don't know what that feels like because I've been so excited and eager and happy and just attacking a place with intensity that I can struggle to. It's almost like it's never enough. Have you ever felt this way? There's more to photograph. I missed that peak. There's this, there's that, there's another location.
Yeah. So especially in Alaska where it's sunrise at 4 and it doesn't set until 11:30. It's like, it's hard to pack it in and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That just inspires me to return though. Like I never feel like this is the last time I'll ever come to this place.
Mm-hmm.
And
because like, why would it be?
Yeah. That's a good attitude to have. I think in my mind, I think it almost stems from like this weird place of gratitude where I'm so grateful to be there, and the thought crosses my mind where it says, hey, you never know, like you get hit by a bus, this could be your last time here ever, and like really take it in. And to me, often really taking it in is capture as much as possible with my camera as opposed to like slow down.
Yeah, I feel like when I really want to take a moment in, I don't even reach for my camera. I just absorb it.
Yeah, and I think I've gotten better at that, but definitely in the beginning, it was snap, 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 snap. 3,000 photos. Now on the trips with Aaron, we have the joke contest of who took the least amount of photos by the end of the trip. It's almost like, you win.
Yeah. It's not me.
No, I think I
did. A close second, but
it's 1,400 in 5 days in Alaska, was it? Maybe less.
I don't remember, but
I don't know if that's a lot or a little.
we saw wildlife's tough because you're like, wildlife's tough.
So does every single exposure count as a photo, really?
I mean, but like people have been doing wildlife since there were cameras. So
yeah,
people were doing wildlife photography with such deliberate intent and picking their moments. And now we're just tracking the eye from a bajillion miles away.
But on the other hand, we are capable of capturing certain moments that were too fleeting to capture with a large format film camera.
Of course.
They had to do like 10-second exposures or took forever to set up.
Just a blur of a bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel a bear, I swear.
Yeah, what it comes down to is I would never sacrifice my experience for the sake of a photo.
Yeah, I think for me and what I was describing, the experience isn't necessarily bad. I'm having a great time. It's just by the end, I'm like 0 in the tank. After Alaska last year, I got sick after the trip, and it was middle of summer. I can't tell you the last time I ever got sick in the summer. Like, I don't think ever in my life.
You must not have kids.
I do not. My time will come, perhaps.
I get a cold like every 2 weeks.
Yeah. I work in a school and have a kid. So.
Oh man, yeah.
But now my immune system is it's tough. It's robust.
You probably caught COVID before it was called COVID.
Yeah, and destroyed it immediately. I was like Patience. Yeah, I was like The Last of Us. That girl. Like, you're immune from the zombies. Yeah. I've lived with them for many years.
Eric, do you think photography's dead on socials?
No.
Okay. So it's not true when people say that, in your opinion?
I haven't heard anybody say that. I've heard people say that social media sucks, and I agree, but...
You haven't heard photography's dead? It's all about video and nobody cares about stills? I've heard that song danced like 1,000 times.
Yeah, but I've never heard it from a person whose opinion I care about, so...
Okay. Well, that's funny, because part B of my question is that if this is true, part A of the question is, do you care? Which clearly is a resounding no. And part C
glad that came off clearly.
Yeah, part C was, does that have any effect on your craft one way or another?
No, I would never cater to a platform or an audience or a trend, because then photography would lose its purpose, which is to form a deeper connection with my surroundings and nature.
Good stuff. I mean, I have nothing more on this. I just wanted to hear people say that you likely couldn't give two shits about whether it's a dead medium or not.
Yeah, he must be a Rick Rubin fan. The audience comes last. Social media last.
I actually haven't read his book yet. It's on my list along with a million other books. But I have listened to several podcasts, and I definitely enjoy his thoughts.
Yeah. That seems to be a controversial opinion. I've seen so many people take both stances on that, and both stances being from artists.
Yeah, are you really an artist if you're trying to cater to the world instead of like expressing your own vision?
Yeah, I guess, like, to play devil's advocate, you are sharing it, so there is some hope that it lands. Because you could essentially just create, right? You could just create and not share.
Okay. Well, okay, so I like it when it lands with people. I like it when I change someone's mind about something, but that has zero effect on whether it was worth the effort or not. Like, I get all of the benefits once I finish processing the image, and whatever comes after is just like a bonus. It's not an expectation or a requirement, or like, I don't need any kind of external validation.
Fair.
It's clear his artistic bubble involves him and his what he gets out of the art. If it lands, that's something, or doesn't land, it's not going to change his process. He's not gonna put up a photo of birch trees that meant a lot to him for whatever reason, and that moment meant a lot, and it gets 0 likes, and be like, well, I'm never fucking doing that again.
Exactly. It's not going to sway my opinion either way, because that's also another trap. Like, if you post a photo of something and it blows up and goes viral, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be the fucking whatever guy, I can't think of anything right now, but and you just want to like recreate that success, and then you just like become redundant because your motive is no longer pure. You don't have like you're driven by external validation.
I've seen a lot of decent photographers early on, kind of when drones started to get really nice, get attention for their drone fall shots, and then they're now drone photographers, and like feel like they can't come back.
Or they like photograph a naked girl in a landscape, and then
and that's
obviously they get a lot of likes.
Game over.
Yeah,
game over.
You're doing it.
Yeah. So do you think would it be fair to revise it to the audience comes last, but it does matter? Or not even that? It's almost this weird paradox, because if the audience, so in the Rick Rubin case, the fact that he did not care about the audience is what led to his success. But then the fact that people liked it also led to his success.
I think there's a difference between art and business. So when art becomes business, there's a difference than the art and the artist.
Right.
And people try to start to monetize it, then the audience does matter. But does it matter to the artist, or does it matter to all the middlemen and producers and record labels, or whoever's running the gallery for you, or putting your photos up in the restaurant? Do you have a following? Are you going to bring people in? Are you going to advertise it? Like, then it becomes a different game versus someone that's truly... Photography is tough too. and Seth, we've talked about this a little bit too, where it's like, it's a skill I think that you can get a lot of attention for at a middle level versus I'm trying to articulate this. There's a lot of piano players in the world. There's only a few where you're like, holy, like that's a piece of your body, that piano.
Right.
But if you go on Instagram, I could see 1 million photographers that have, oh, like, that's a great moment that you captured with this really nice equipment. Like, great job. But the art of photography, the everything that it used to be and can still be, there is a difference. There's a difference between like curated pop music and someone that like spent 4 years writing like their memoirs into an album, and like it's just for them. Or Bon Iver, who went into a cabin after a breakup with 2 microphones and a guitar and made an incredible album. Like there's for no one but his breakup in a sense. And then it becomes big. But
the pure stuff is always the most impactful, and it doesn't always become popular. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've always like operated under the philosophy or hope that if I do my very best and do what I care the most about, it's most likely for other people to care about it as well. But like I've also just been very lucky. It's not like I've done things to make it work financially, thankfully. And that's the thing, I never would, because it would defeat the whole purpose of this pursuit, like of being a full-time photographer. So if for whatever reason it stopped working out financially, instead of like betraying my integrity and doing things that I don't feel comfortable doing for the sake of making a living, I would just do something else to make a living. Because this is very sacred to me, and I very actively protect it any way I can. Because it's just like, such a great, enriching experience in my life.
That's a great point. I mean, we've heard people all the time who say, "Oh, I want to become a photographer because I want it to be my living." And I say, "Well, why? If you want to make money with your camera, if that's the sole reason you want to get into photography, that doesn't really make much sense. I mean, if it's just about the money, you could go do anything else and have the exact same outcome. Like there has to be I think you need to be further on the artist spectrum than the businessman spectrum to an extent. I think it's smart if you can figure out ways to monetize. But I mean, if that's your sole reason, I don't really, as you said, it doesn't make much sense because I can go be a mechanic, I can go be a pilot, I can go do anything, really.
Yeah,
right?
I see a lot of nature photographers become nature photographers so they can teach workshops. And like for me, I was never like, oh, I'm going to become a photographer so I can sell tutorial videos and books and teach workshops. Those are just things that naturally happened when people reached out to learn from me. Without any
sharing a workshop
initiative on my own.
You're on something you care about. You're sharing a workshop on something you care about. I mean, in your example, if it's just about selling workshops, go sell a workshop on something you're really passionate about, whether it's yoga or mountaineering or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
Yeah, I think perfectly. So
there was another quote in one of your videos. Pulling a lot from those, but that's okay. It's full of good stuff. You said so much of our time as photographers is spent not actually photographing things, which is so true. You know, we're driving places, we're in the shower, scrub-a-dub-dub. How are you practicing photography when you physically don't have a camera in your hand? And part 2 to this question, when is it beneficial for you to just think about anything else other than photography?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first. I'm never actively thinking about photography. Cool. Unless I don't know, like if I'm editing a tutorial video, you know, that's pretty focused. But I'm never like actively thinking about like practicing photography, taking a photo. I am always actively observing my surroundings, no matter where I am. If I'm inside my house, I notice light coming through the window, unique things, small miracles created by nature all around me. I'm observant of people, their gestures, and I'm a careful listener. That's kind of just like a natural character trait that I have, but it's also something I've tried to develop because I feel like you can learn a lot of things if you're quiet and you're just like attuned and observant of the world around you instead of always like actively doing stuff and speaking and things like that. So I feel like, like one of the best things you can do is just learn how, like, I think that's kind of a fallacy that a lot of photographers are guilty of, like thinking that you just turn it on when you're somewhere spectacular and you have your camera in your backpack, as opposed to something that you can actively engage in and practice 24/7 by just looking at things closer, decluttering your mind, and being an open receptacle for different things around you.
So being in a state of almost constant immersion.
Mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. I did not do photography my whole life, but the change in the way you see things, and it was, this is 6 years ago starting this, and just especially when you're passionate about something and you have that rocket booster of like obsession in the beginning, you start to really recognize that I am looking and scanning everything. Every leaf that's turned in a weird way, like it gets you the dog head tilt, like, oh, that's interesting. And just the fascination with patterns and nature and how many photos you take in the beginning, and trying to keep that rocket booster as long as you can, and keep noticing things and keep pointing things out. My photography friends that live local, like those are the only people that text and are like, look at the clouds today. And it's like, they're photographers. Like they notice like, wow, that's cool, or like that's different, or that's unique. Like those are the people that notice the world. And it's kind of like a sixth sense, like you get a different view on everything. And maybe that's where like the city, like head down, like financial mindset of like money and business, like I just don't understand, because it's like, I feel like you have like, I want to rip the blinders off. That's
super shallow.
In the woods. It does seem, I'm not judging, and maybe it's a whole different world, maybe one that I just don't understand. And they might say the same thing to me. Like you don't get numbers, and you don't, this idea of,
it's a fair judgment. The natural world existed before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. I was just trying to be nice to our financial listeners.
Sometimes I'll catch myself, like if I'm talking to somebody and there's like a tree behind them and it's like perfectly centered behind them, I'll like take a few steps to the side so the tree's like in a more pleasing spot, like according to their
Sorry, I was
body.
just placing you better in the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to enjoy the moment a little more, make it more aesthetic.
You were standing in the wrong.
I grew up skateboarding, and before I got into photography, I would constantly see like urban environments in terms of like, could this be skated in a certain way, like connecting objects together to see if you could like, if there's like a small bank, like if you could launch off of it and like grind on a handrail or something, or like the height of ledges and rails and things. Like I was always like viewing the world through that lens. And then I noticed once I got into photography, I was kind of just automatically composing everything as well. It's just something that happens. And I still like look at urban environments in terms of like whether it can be skateboarded or not.
There's a quote from Adam Carolla that says he drives by and he sees kids skateboarding and he goes, I know that kid's going to be all right. And I think getting into the practice of practicing skateboarding and the repetitions, and I want to do a kickflip and it's going to take me 1,000 times and broken bones and whatever it is to get there. What has skateboarding taught you in terms of that quote in life and with photography?
Yeah, definitely perseverance. Definitely physical pain isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Resilience, a lot of mental fortitude, because you can go crazy knowing you can do something, but not being able to. And sometimes, having it take several days, having to return and try again, and just like being defeated, but not being ultimately defeated on a constant basis.
Yeah, it's that. And when he said that, I was like, music too. If someone got through the pain of learning guitar or piano or any instrument, they kind of get the blueprint of, this is going to suck and I'm going to suck, but I want to get past that. And a lot of people stop at this sucks and not for me. You know?
They want everything to be easy, and they're going to take the path of least resistance, not realizing that resistance is like how things get stronger and solidified.
Yeah. I mean, skateboarding, songwriting, language learning, I think literally everything just ends up being repetitions. It can't be any other way. It's just,
you can't learn something in your first attempt and like be as good as you can possibly be just from doing it once.
Right. And not only that, it's not just things, eccentric things like skateboarding or songwriting or learning Mandarin. It's every single thing is reps to become good at it. Not just these kind of like fringe activities.
Just lifting weights, right? Like it's literally reps. And it's like the most mundane thing you can do, like lifting up heavy stuff, but you can learn so much by doing it.
Yeah. And next week I'll lift something 2.5 pounds heavier for the same amount of reps. Yep. And then I'll do that over the course of 4 years. It's
Seth,
literally that. What?
Seth, to your point, do you want to know what the most cruel game is because of that?
It's going to be golf. Yep. Of course it's golf.
Because anyone can hit their first shot and maybe hit the best shot they're going to hit in the next 1,000 first. So it's when I used to teach golf, I would talk to people like, if I give you a guitar, could you by accident play whatever piece, Van Halen right now by accident? Could you do that? No.
True.
Every other thing you have to scaffold up to a point. Golf's that one thing that drives you nuts because it's the ball's still and you can hit some good shots, even if your form is terrible. It's unbelievable.
Like, anybody can swing a club and get lucky. Yeah. Like there's enough room for luckiness.
Photography, by the way, you put it on auto, put it in the right section, right direction, and boom, you got a masterpiece. I can argue it there too, potentially.
Yeah, definitely. Like your hit rate, like, some people can get lucky every now and again. A broken clock is right twice a day. But that's the thing. Like it's still not intentional. So it's like, can you intentionally create something that is meaningful and profound and sustains attention,
consistently?
Because sometimes like the moment can just kind of do all the work for you, and it's very obvious how you can portray it, and then people are impressed by it, but there's really not any kind of like imprint on your part. You didn't really like do anything except just stand in the right place at the right time, which I hate that saying, by the way. Like photography is all about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, almost as if it's by accident. What if you're in the right place at the right time and it's entirely you're doing though?
Yeah.
Then what? Do you still hate it? If you're in the right...
Well, it's just never the wrong time. You just got to see the right thing. Like it's never a wrong time to do photography.
There you go.
Or a wrong place. Like,
yeah, and you wouldn't be standing in the wrong place, the wrong time and have a picture of it. Or would you? But then it would be the right place.
Right.
The right time.
I guess if you make a good photo, it's always right place, right time. But that's like after the fact. It's not like something you determined before.
Another thing I really noticed about your page is you're out in Utah, and unless I saw that, I think, and there's a few recognizable spots, but it's not all the big spots. It's not, here's Angel's Landing and Observation Point at Zion and the Arches. Let's get some Astro at Arches. Let's do like all the classic things. You have to. It's a deeper layer, and I think that's important for people to not be blinded by. Living out east in Connecticut, of all places, It is difficult for landscape, and you have to go out and be creative and get, oh, here's a little waterfall. I'm going to make something out of this. I love how the light is here. I'm going to come back tomorrow and kind of sit on this for a minute. Traveling out west for the first time or seeing certain places, like coming through the bend at Yosemite and being right down that valley, is kind of like, well, I guess this photo is good. Like, it's so obvious, right? Versus trying to, like, maybe I'm going to take my 600 millimeter and zoom in on that far peak or that waterfall, or like changing it up versus just seeing like the impressiveness of such landscapes that are out there and trying to see something deeper or more unique is tough, and a skill that you definitely have, because like I said, on your page, you go through and you're like, that's a cool image, but it could almost be anywhere for some of it, a lot of it. Like your fall stuff is really great and enticing, but it doesn't scream Utah. It's big. How many national parks are there? 7?
5.
Utah's big 5. It doesn't scream that, which I think beginning amateur photographers get stuck in that sort of, I need this banger, I need this banger, I need this banger. And it becomes automatic. It almost becomes like AI versus
very generic.
Yeah, versus heart and emotion.
Yeah, I would say I don't have a propensity nor an aversion towards any kind of photograph. It's more just that the obvious stuff doesn't excite me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see something that's very obvious, it's just not like, it just doesn't inspire me to try and create a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at your Instagram page, like I'm doing right now, all the pieces glue each other together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a consistent commitment to an art form and style that, when surrounded by one another, becomes the sum of its parts in a nice way. That's the best way I can articulate it. Perhaps you can do a better job of your own work, or is that roughly close?
Yeah. Is your profile intentional in that way, or is it mood or just theme for a little while? You know, like, this is what I'm feeling for a bit and this is what I'm posting.
I just look like I'm reading a book as I scroll.
Yeah, chapters.
With chapters
like
that make sense.
Well, so a lot of that is due to the fact that I release images in collections. I never release single images. So when I release a collection, I release those images like in succession on social media. So yeah, you're going to see like groupings of photos because those are collections that I curated and sequenced and everything very intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking about the nebulous facet of photography, which we refer to as style, that is not something I've intentionally crafted, or it's not anything contrived or intentional. That is just the natural byproduct of going out and photographing things that I find genuinely interesting and that I care about.
Yeah.
So the more personal you are, the more personality your photographs are going to have as a result. And that just naturally happens. It's not like, a lot of people ask, like, how did you develop your style? Or how can I create my own style so I can stand out? And it's like, by trying to create a style, you're kind of like, you're kind of hindering yourself from having a real one.
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, wasn't suggesting you were trying to make a style, for lack of a better term. I just think exactly what you said. It's a byproduct. And even, you mentioned collections, just even the collections blend from collection to collection. Not just image to image. Which I think is just a testament to you naturally sticking to what you find interesting, as we've sort of talked about as the overarching.
It's as simple as that. Yeah. Like, I don't want to, I feel like you might be giving me too much credit even. Like, it's really nothing that profound.
Well, I mean, even that, even you just saying that is, there's a lot of value in people hearing that. It's just simple. I'm not overcomplicating things. I'm doing the thing. Right?
That was his exact description of Treehouse. Not that profound.
What's your podcast called?
It's called Brews and Views.
Brews and Views. We'll put
it's on YouTube.
Put a link to that in the episode description. What can people expect if they like that little intermission with your knowledgeable brewery and beer facts?
You can expect a lot of unexpected things because we have some wild tangents very frequently, as you would maybe expect if 7 or 8 guys are drinking together.
Is that how many are on the show?
It depends. Yeah. Typically it's 5 if we have a guest, but sometimes we'll have like 7 or 8. Like we've had some episodes where we've had like 10 people. So it's really just about getting together and sharing photographs with each other that we found on the internet recently to elevate other photographers and talk about what we like about the images and try to get them a little bit more airtime than their images probably get on social media while people are doom scrolling. So cool. I think you can learn a lot about photography by watching us, point out things that we like about certain images. I mean, we have incredible guests on like all the time, like Hans Strawn, Richard Martin, Sarah Marino, Alex Noriega. Like we've had David Thompson. We've had so many guests that are all incredible. So it's really cool to see what kinds of photographs they like because they never share their own. It's all about sharing other people's photographs. So it's kind of cool to see like what your favorite photographers like and why they like it and hear them break it down while they're also a bit looser and more comfortable and maybe drop some F-bombs.
Do you guys do this in person or is it virtual?
I wish we could do it in person and be even more outrageous, but yeah, we do it over Zoom.
It is hard. Well, we'll put a link to that in the episode description for people who are interested in that to check that out along with all your other links. Eric, it's been a pleasure talking with you today, man. Really appreciate it.
You guys as well. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you.